Hello and welcome to Prairie Pulse. Joining me today is Steve Gerber, the Executive Director of the FM Area Foundation. Steve, thanks for joining us. I tried to add another word in there for just a second. Steve, as we get started, tell folks a little bit about yourself and your background.
Well, I've actually been here about 8 months now. Came from Idaho. Originally was an Oregonian and moved to Idaho when I came out of high school. My background really has been, first of all, in business, working with the telephone company, actually, with what was Mountain Bell back then, became part of U.S. West when the merger took place. It included Northwestern Bell. Went to work for the U.S. West Foundation, and my territory that I covered in the states included Minnesota and the Dakotas. So at least I was familiar with this area. When I left the phone company as part of their downsizing, I became the head of the Idaho Community Foundation for a period of time. And when I left there, went over and was the head of the Idaho State Historical Society for 10 years. So when I took a retirement from that, I knew I wanted to go back into philanthropy and started looking around and had the opportunity to come to North Dakota to the Community Foundation and go back into that work, and it worked out very well for me.
Well, there you go. So obviously you've got a background, it sounds like then, but so what really attracted you to this job?
Well, needing a job for one thing. I'd been looking for a while and hadn't really found anything, and the economy, obviously, with the downturn, Idaho was suffering much worse than what the Dakotas were. Had this opportunity, and when I came up here and did my interview, even though it was 16 below in January when I came in, I just really felt comfortable with the area. It reminded me a lot of the Boise area where I had been about 20 years ago, from the standpoint of the people, the community, the friendliness. I mean, just all these things just kind of fell into place, and it was like, that's going to be a great place to go.
Well, I can relate to that.
And it has turned out to be just that way, too.
Okay. So how has the transition been so far?
The transition's been great, just because I think of the people, because of who I've been able to work with, the help that we've had, the opportunities, I think, to really kind of ratchet up the visibility and involvement and growth of the Community Foundation, and hopefully telling our story so people really understand more about what we are.
Okay. Well, give us a little bit then of what is the FM Area Foundation and maybe a little history.
Well, the Community Foundation, actually, community foundations as a whole aren't unusual. In fact, nationally there are over 400 of them. And the concept basically is based on economy of scale. The Community Foundation creates funds from charitable giving from individuals, and they pool the funds together from the standpoint of investing. So rather than somebody taking $25,000 and putting it in the bank and using the interest to make charitable gifts, we pool all of those funds together, and then we can invest, in our case, millions of dollars. We get better returns that way, and the management of them is less costly, and we have the outreach programs to deal with the charitable giving, and we work with individuals to decide who might benefit from those funds. We have more than 200 funds in the Community Foundation now, each one of them named by the individuals who create them, and they decide in a lot of cases specifically where they want their charitable giving to go every year. And so we benefit, I guess, from an administrative savings by pooling everything together. We benefit from the growth that takes place by pooling it together. Then we take the interest, the earnings off of that, and utilize that to make contributions. So basically, we're designed to be there into perpetuity and continue to grow and always be there. Even some of the people who created early funds are gone, but their funds continue to live on.
Yeah. And how many employees do you have?
We have 3 full-time counting myself, or 4 full-time counting myself, and 2 part-time employees that work at the foundation.
Well, so what is the structure then of the foundation?
Well, the foundation is overseen by a board of governors, 17-member board of governors made up of people from throughout the community, community leaders. The chairman of the board is Matt Butler, who's retired, used to own or still is an owner of Butler Equipment. Our vice chairman is Tom Schaefer, who was an IBM executive. Past chairman was Tracy Moorhead, who works at Concordia College. So it's a real variety and mix of individuals from throughout the community who basically have oversight of the operation of the foundation and are involved in decisions about where charitable giving takes place.
Well, now you were talking just earlier about how the assets sort of are managed. What kind of assets do you have, and how many organizations are you helping, I guess?
Well, we have, as of right now, roughly, and it depends on what's going on with the market today, we have close to $43 million in assets that we manage right now. We have more than 200 different funds within the foundation that have been created. And last year, we gave grants to 213 different organizations and institutions, nonprofit organizations, charitable organizations, universities. We have funds that are held that are endowed funds to benefit churches, for example, and so the earnings from that go specifically back to that church. So there's a real variety in the kinds of grants that we can give out. Probably the most active kinds of grants are scholarships. Last year we gave scholarships to more than 120 students for college. So it's a real variety of the benefits, and I think one of the, probably a good example of kind of how the process works is to look back at our first fund that was created. And the Community Foundation is going to be celebrating its 50th anniversary next year. So 49 years ago in 1960, a group of citizens headed by a man named Arthur Coupler, who was an attorney at that time, created the Community Foundation. He created a fund with an initial $85,000, and then when his wife passed away, she took the estate and put another $375,000 into this fund, which was a scholarship fund. Today, the Arthur and Clara Coupler Fund has a value of about $1.8 million. So that's grown considerably from that original $450,000. But they also have distributed over $3 million in earnings off of that fund and literally given away thousands of dollars or thousands of scholarships to people over that period of time. So that initial seed money that he put in has continued to grow as far as the amount of money in his fund, but also had the benefits of having the earnings going out. And that's an example of the way that those funds work that we develop in the foundation.
Well, so I heard you mention about different, scholarships for one, but what types of organizations are helped through the foundation? But I mean, it's a wide variety then. And are they really specifically named, or is it general?
When we set up a fund, there really is a wide variety of choices that the individual can have to create a fund. They can do an advised fund where literally they continue to make decisions about where they want the earnings to go every year, and they get to decide, what organizations, and that may vary from year to year. So you don't know for sure who you're going to be giving to from year to year. They can do an area of interest fund where they say, I want my earnings to go to youth programs, and we make decisions based on applications that come in for those types of things. We have what we call a community fund, which basically is unrestricted fund, and if someone wants to put money into that, we make decisions from year to year, again based on need, where those funds go. So you can't really point to any specific area that we deal with on an ongoing basis, because we're set up to respond to what the needs are on an ongoing basis. So year to year, we may be doing very different things depending on what the needs are in the community.
Well, do you ever have individuals come to you and want to do something, and do you help advise them where their money might go?
Right. We work with the individual when they come to us, and we also work a great deal with attorneys and estate planners and people like that. And that's probably where we have the most activity, has to do with the long-term planning process by someone's estate planner, or in some cases at the end of the year, somebody will take a look at the need to do something with taxes and perhaps creating a fund or adding to an existing fund with some of those funds and the tax benefits. North Dakota, we're really lucky, is one of the states that literally has special legislation that provides tax credits for those who contribute to endowments, to long-term funds like we handle. So if someone gives $100,000, they actually can write off up to 40% in a tax credit, not a charitable deduction, but in fact right off the bottom line of what they might give in taxes. So there's some real advantages to utilizing the endowment process that we have in place.
Okay. Well, who are your donors? Not specific names necessarily, but what and who are your donors? And we keep talking individuals, but the businesses also contribute?
It's really again a wide variety, and we will set up funds, with individuals if that's what they want to do. A lot of times families come in as a family as a whole to set up a foundation, an account with the foundation, a fund with the foundation. We have corporations that do those things. We work with companies in some cases where they have a special project, and we will accept the funds, the donations that come in for that, and then pass those funds on through on a short-term basis also, not just in the perpetual kind of thing. Then we have endowments for nonprofit organizations where they know that they will have the earnings off of that coming in every year, and it helps with their budgeting process to know something's going to be definitely coming in. And we have as I said earlier, churches are another example of organizations that have created endowed funds. Someone will set up a fund for XYZ church, and they know that those funds will be coming in, the earnings off of those every year, and they can make decisions based on knowing that there's an income coming from that fund.
When someone comes to you for the first time, maybe I just set it up that way, just to answer my question. If they come to you for the first time and say, I want to give XYZ church or whatever, set up a fund, do you have minimum amounts, or how do you do that?
Yeah, we have a minimum amount of $25,000, and in recognition of the fact that just not anybody can come in the door and say, gee, I have $25,000 that just happens to be sitting there to create a fund, or that I want to respond to a specific need. We have created a new program called the Giving Growth Group, which basically allows people to contribute on a monthly basis or quarterly, whatever they want to do, over up to a 6-year period to reach that $25,000. And we did that because there are a lot of young executives and individuals that just don't have the $25,000 to create a fund, and this allows them to build up to that. And it's a new program that we've implemented that we think will provide a broader opportunity, I guess, for people to be able to do charitable giving. And keep in mind that we are in this for the long run, and that's probably the biggest difference between the Fargo-Moorhead Area Foundation and a lot of other charities. Generally, they're going to operate on a year-to-year basis, and they're going to be out doing fundraising every year. They operate on an annual basis. They know what goes on with their budget. In our case, our purpose is to be there forever. And when you create a fund, we look into the future. We invest maybe more conservatively than some other people do. I know there was some criticism in the past that, guys, you're awful conservative in what you're doing. With what happened with the market, suddenly that looked really like a brilliant strategy because we weren't impacted as badly as some other people were. So we respond to what the interests are of the individual, and we can work with them on the creation of funds and offer a real variety of options for them.
Okay. Well, does your organization aid in grant writing and grant making? Or?
We as an organization that generally disperses out grants from our funds, we don't do that much grant writing. We have and do work with other organizations, with other charitable organizations, perhaps with specific projects, and do a cooperative kind of a thing and work with them, and maybe in some cases even write the grant where we request funds for a specific need within the community or something like that. In fact, we're looking at some opportunities right now from the standpoint of some economic development types of things, and also possibly something with dealing with the poor and some needs within that area.
Sure. Well, has the economic downturn affected, the foundation in terms of giving? I mean, people probably just don't have as much discretionary income as they've had.
We actually have. I think the economic downturn has affected us from the standpoint of our endowments and what we hold. We were affected like everyone else, but as I indicated, we have a little bit more long-term conservative approach, and so we didn't take a hit as bad as some people did. But we have had funds continue to grow, and one thing that we find from the standpoint of the community foundation is people are looking at the long term, and in a lot of cases they're looking at the tax incentives and those types of things. So they're whether the economic environment is up or down, they're still wanting to do those types of things. And I think as we come to the latter part of the year, we'll see the same kind of activity with people doing tax types of things and estate planning types of things.
Sure. Well, now, are you always actively fundraising then?
We're always actively fundraising from the standpoint of our basic operating needs to make sure that we're adequately funded to do the work of the foundation. And we're always out there working with those who may be interested in creating funds. And with our 50th anniversary coming up next year, we're anticipating a real increase in hopefully visibility and the opportunity to tell the story of the Community Foundation and hopefully get people interested in and involved with it.
Well, with so many people, then how do you walk the fine line of sort of asking for contributions and maybe being too greedy?
Well, there's a tremendous demand right now, with the nonprofits, and it's sad because at the time when the economy falls off like it has been, it seems like the needs for a lot of charitable organizations go up with that, and the giving process kind of slows down and things. And so we depend mostly on the fee that we charge, which depending on the size of the fund and things could be anywhere from 1% of that fund to 2/10 of that fund, and those funds pretty much help us to operate. We do have a program where individuals can support what the foundation does, and it's a fairly new program, the Community Horizons Alliance, where people can basically join this alliance and express financial support for the operation of the foundation. That allows us to go out there and increase our visibility and the opportunity to tell our story.
Well, expand on that. Talk about a Community Horizons Alliance. Can you expand on that program?
Well, basically, it's somewhat of a membership program, although we don't really look at it that way. It's just an opportunity for businesses and individuals who don't want to create an entire fund or something to make a contribution to the Community Foundation for its operations. Half of those funds go to our operation of the foundation and the work that we need to do to just basically tell our story. The other half of those funds go into unrestricted giving, so it's dispersed out to what the needs are within the community. Obviously, this in 2009, a lot of that activity kind of at the last minute, unprepared type of decisions were tied to the flooding and some of those kind of things. And so we try to respond to what the real needs are on an ongoing basis within the community.
Sure. Well, we've talked about the economy some, and you've alluded to different things. But are you seeing sort of an upswing with the recession that's been happening?
Well, my observation, kind of coming from the outside, is that first of all, this area has not been as adversely impacted by the economic downturn. So that obviously has been good for I think all of us who live here, and and from the charitable standpoint, it could be a whole lot worse than it is from that standpoint. But I think that I have been very impressed with what I have seen from the standpoint of the giving process and the giving feeling that we have within this area, and we feel good about what's been taking place. I think we've had growth somewhere around $1.5 million this year in funds that are either new funds or people are giving to their existing funds to grow them some more so that we can have that much more of an impact in the future.
Okay. Well, can you talk some then about the 3G fund? That's another fund.
Yeah, the Giving Growth Group was the one I mentioned that actually a lot of community foundations call it the Acorn Fund, but right now it seems like Acorn's not the most popular reference with what's going on politically and things, and we actually called ours the Giving Growth Group, which means on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, annually, or whatever, you can give over a period of time and create a fund. And as part of that process, annually, we're going to take a portion of what comes in, and it's a fairly new program, so we're just getting started in this. We're going to take a portion of it. People who participate are going to be able to come in and sit down as a group and decide where the earnings in that particular year will be utilized. So it will engage them in decisions about, first of all, knowledge about what's going on in the charitable needs within the community, but also decide where they would like to see those funds go. So it's something fairly new for us, and there's been a lot of interest in it. We just launched it, and so we're just we have one person who anonymously has created the first fund, and we're really excited about the opportunities for that new program that we've got at the foundation.
Well, now you've talked about different programs, and what I'm hearing you say too, though, is you don't have to be just terribly wealthy, and wealthy is a relative term,
Correct.
I guess, but to be able to work with the foundation and help out in the community.
Yeah, well, we accept contributions into any of the funds that already exist, or we have the unrestricted fund that we have that's an endowed fund, and people can give to that. And in fact, that's a real area that we would like to see grow. Most of our funds are designated funds where the individuals decide where the money's going to go. We don't have as much flexibility as we wish we did. In fact, less than 10% of what we hold is what you could call unrestricted funds, where our foundation gets to decide where those funds go to respond to what the immediate needs are. We had applications for our grants this year of over $1 million, and we had about $150,000 in unrestricted money that we could give out. So there's certainly a need out there, if you just look at the applications that come in for charitable giving, and we can't respond to all those kind of things, and we obviously look at trying to grow the unrestricted funds and the ability to respond to what those needs are.
Well, you've been here 8 months, and and you've worked in some of this in the past. So, is this region, by and large, a giving community in terms of charitable?
It definitely is, and that's one of the things I think that also was attractive to me when I came in and started hearing what the potential was here, and that potential was based on what has happened in the past, and I think you saw that really with the floods. I mean, you saw what the community spirit was, and the concern about what needed to be done for people as a whole and society and the community, and that really carries right on through to what we see happening with charitable giving, with organizations, not just with ours, but I think with other nonprofits and philanthropy. As a whole, it's a very positive environment here.
Well, do you have any PR effort going on to letting people know that about you and everything?
Yeah, well, we're the fact that there's a new executive director, was an opportunity, I think, for some visibility, and we've done that. We actually have made a lot of changes on our board of trustees and brought in some people that we think will increase our community involvement and them spreading the word, so to speak, on the community foundation. We also, as I said, we're headed for the 50th anniversary in 2010. We're going to be doing some special things, not only with ratcheting up our visibility, but special events. We actually are involved in nonprofit week activities this month that are designed to increase not only our the knowledge of our participation in those kind of things and coordination, but also just increase knowledge of charitable giving in the community.
Oh, good. 8 months, you're still new, you're under a year. Got any goals for the future?
Well, I think just to grow the foundation, I think it's something that really is good for the community, and mostly we're going to spend our time trying to help people understand what we are and the opportunities that the Community Foundation presents. It's, if anything, I have found generally that there are many people out there who say, "What is the Community Foundation?" and it's too bad that they say that after 49 years, but our intent is to show an incredible record of accomplishment and support for the community over the last 5 decades.
Okay. Steve, real quick, if people want more information, where can they go?
Well, probably the quickest way is our website that everybody uses now, www.areafoundation.org.
Okay. Well, Steve, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Well, that's all we have this week. And as always, thanks for watching.